action number 9. Action item number 9 is resolution specifying the Board of Supervisors' good faith commitment to appropriate funding necessary for the county to meet its obligations under the tentative agreement with Southern States Police Benevolent Association as set forth in Department of Management and Budget's fiscal impact study. Supervisor Gross.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the resolution.
You've heard the motion. I'm happy to second that motion along with Supervisor Palchik. Supervisor Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my 28 years as personnel chair, we've done drop, compensation plan, retirement plans, but I think the heaviest lift we've ever done was a collective bargaining agreement. We started talking about, there was discussion of collective bargaining and I wish we could, back when I started. It took 7 terms to get us there and a change in the General Assembly's makeup. But I am very pleased that we are here where we are. If you have plenty of time, you can read every word of both of these resolutions and the agreements. I had to look up some of the terminology because I did not know what some of those things were. But I think we are now in a place where we will be able to move forward for our employees, especially for our public safety and firefighters. And this is a nice note to go out on. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gross. Supervisor Palchik.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And a historic moment today, both the retirement of 2 of our long-serving members, but also the first time we are approving two collective bargaining agreements. In addition to the many financial aspects that are incorporated, and want to thank everyone who worked on these, I personally want to point out in both of them, I believe it's Article 54 in both, the mental health and wellness services that we know are so critical, and we've heard from many of our staff. We talked today about the impact on our families for our service. I very much appreciate that this addresses the impact to our public safety employees and their families for their service, and the need for us to continue to invest not just in salaries, which are critical, and so many other on-site work improvements, but definitely the need for mental health, physical health, and wellness, both for those who serve and for their families and those who have died in line of duty. So just appreciate everyone's efforts on both of these. I won't speak again, but I know that from our county staff to our employees, to our board, so much has gone into this, and a few things still to continue to be worked out. But I think for the first time in so many decades, it went rather smoothly for being such a heavy lift. So thank you, and thank you to our county leadership for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Supervisor Palchik. Supervisor Harity.
Yeah, I've shared my concerns about public sector collective bargaining in the past, so I'm going to just try to be brief. My biggest issues here, and there was obviously some very good things in this agreement. There's probably some very bad things in this agreement, but I just don't like the fact the board really had no input into the objectives of the agreement. Recruiting and retention, mental health, and public safety are obviously critical, but we didn't share with our staff what our objectives were in this. We've had no briefings on what objectives were accomplished, what things our employees wanted that we weren't able to give them in this agreement. At least I haven't. I don't know whether anybody else on this board has, but I don't know that that's a good way to manage, to turn it over to staff and let them hammer it out with our public safety officials without board input or report back to the board on what's in here and what's not. So it's very difficult for me to sit here other than reading. And oh, by the way, we've been told we can't talk to them so on this agreement. So for those reasons and many others, I'm not going to be supporting this. But although I support many of the things that are in there, I certainly support compensation. I led the effort on public safety compensation, and I'm going to continue to.
we will lead the effort to fund public safety compensation, as this board has done as well.
And in every budget I've put forward.
Supervisor Harity.
Yeah, some of
Supervisor
us have-
Walkinshaw has the floor.
Some of us have supported it and voted for it. I'll just say, one, on that point, I recall Supervisor Harity once saying that this is a board. We aren't 10 mini county executives running around making every decision. I appreciate the work that our negotiating team has done and our staff has done. And, as we went through and Supervisor Gross and I worked through the working group to establish the ordinance, one of my priorities that I felt was a huge opportunity for us as a county is to give our employees, in this case our public safety employees, a real voice, because they have some of the best ideas about how to improve some of the things Supervisor Harity just talked about. And I won't go through, everything that I do like about the agreement. One thing that jumped out at me in this agreement actually was the foreign language stipend. Because I've spent some time in ride-alongs with our officers in the West Springfield district and parts of the district where if you don't have Spanish language skills, it is really hard to do the job. And I've asked officers about it, and they have said it's difficult to take extra time to go through the classes and the certification to get those foreign language skills, and the stipend would help. And because of collective bargaining, they got to sit down at the table, I presume, and make that argument straight out of their mouths, not mine or the chiefs or the county executives. And that is a real value of this process. The other thing I'll just point out, and I appreciate the fiscal impact, I think it's important to note that even without collective bargaining, right, we would likely, I'm sure, be looking at compensation increases as we typically do. So when it says that the year one impact is $33 million, I don't want anyone to go out and say collective bargaining is costing us $33 million. Because if we didn't have collective bargaining, we would have done what we did last year and the year before and the year before and the year before and look at our pay plan, the MRA, pay studies, all of the other elements of it, and maybe it would have come out the same or slightly different. But it's not collective bargaining is costing us $33 million, because we would have incurred a lot of those costs with or without it. But I appreciate all the work. I think looking at some other jurisdictions, I said this before, in our region, and the challenges that they have had in their process, I think it demonstrates that we set up a good process, and credit goes to our team on the county side, but also the employee groups for the professionalism that everyone brought to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Walkinshaw. Seeing no further discussion, let me just reiterate the point that was just made, because I do think is important. We spent a lot of time talking about recruitment and retention, and we see what's happening across the region. And I do want to reiterate that many of the commitments that are in this, that we're expecting the county executive to include in his budget proposal to us, are things we likely would have had to do anyway in this particular market. And so I think Supervisor Harity missed the point of collective bargaining, because the point was to get the public safety folks at the table to hear from them, and not the politicians try to speak for them, which unfortunately happens on this dais, and most of the time it's not right. So to hear from them, the employee groups, and to be able to work together with them on an agreement that respects the very specialized work that we do and makes them feel like they have a voice, is the point of collective bargaining. It's not for us to speak for them. And I think that's maybe a huge fundamental disagreement in process. But in this particular instance, I do want to thank all the groups for working collectively on an agreement that is before us today to consider. And most importantly, as Supervisor Walkinshaw mentioned, this stands in stark contrast to the performance of this process in other parts of Virginia and certainly other parts of the country, where we did not have to, because of the hard work of staff and employee groups, bring in a third-party arbitrator to resolve major differences. And we're hoping that, not only are we hoping that we can fund and support this in the budget, but we're also hoping that that spirit of collaboration continues as we move forward, because we have seen where that hasn't worked, and the outcome of those conversations in most cases don't benefit anyone, at least in the short term. But here we have folks who have come together, worked together in a very professional way, and Supervisor Gross mentioned how long we've been working on this. I can remember the early days of working on this, but if you think about how quickly we've gotten to where we are to be here today, I think is a remarkable testament to the hard work of a lot of people who are in this auditorium and some people who aren't in this auditorium, and to all the public safety workers who are working right now to benefit them and their families. And just to be clear, this is a collective bargaining agreement in this particular case that we're talking about police officers, but collectively, we have another item in a moment for fire and rescue. Collectively, we're talking about the firefighters, police officers, and public safety communicators who serve this county every single day. And so with that, all those in favor of action item number 9, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Harity, nay.
Any abstentions? And that motion carries 9-1. Action item number 10 is a resolution specifying the Board of Supervisors' good faith commitment to appropriate necessary funding for the county to meet its obligations under the tentative agreement with International Association of Firefighters Local 2068 as set forth in Department of Management and Budget's final impact study. Supervisor Gross.
I'm tempted to say ditto, but I move the county executive's recommendation and would just note that it was the Firefighters Local 2068 who first started talking to me about this, I think, in 1996.
And I'm happy to second that motion. Discussion on the motion. Supervisor Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my comments are really regarding both agreements and our efforts. And I think much of that's already been said, but I want to reinforce the fact that it's far more than just a wage or a particular dollar amount. It's about really ability to engage and involve and frankly make a difference in things that you, as a public safety person, police officer, firefighter, EMT, et cetera, experience every single day that I don't experience, that I don't have that knowledge, that insight, that, if you will, that democratization of the process, I think is hugely powerful for all of us. The other point I wanted to make is the challenge that we have, and based on some conversations I've had, there's a number of changes in kind of our administrative procedures and rules and processes that will go into effect almost immediately, and those will, frankly, have a huge impact on the life, if you will, the daily routine that our officers and firefighters have. And I know that a neighboring jurisdiction went through that process, and things weren't ready and weren't implemented right at the start, and it created issues. And I'm hoping that our county and our staff, our county executive, others are ready, willing, and frankly on top of those kinds of implementations, so that on day one, this agreement gets implemented the way that it was negotiated and understood that it would be implemented. So again, my thanks to county staff, the huge effort, the heavy lift that this had, and our public safety employees and the representation that they had, that we got here, and we got an agreement, I think, that will serve us all very, very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stork. Let me also thank the folks who were involved, including 2068. I was going to say what Supervisor Gross said, which is they've been talking about this issue for longer than anybody else in this county has been. And so we've finally gotten to this milestone point, in large part due to your constant advocacy and work. Not just on your members, but on behalf of county employees in general. But if it wasn't for 2068, we would not be where we are today. It's clear to say that your work in Richmond and with this board, and I think that's worth noting and celebrating. With that, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Harity, nay.
Any abstentions? And that motion too carries 9-1. And that brings us to action, let's see, that's the end of our action items.
Yes.
We have one information item today, which the board does not vote, and this item is the presentation of the fiscal year FY 2023 annual